Okay, so are you ready to dive in? Today, we're going to be exploring this piece called Big Rewards for Long-Term Thinkers. It's a pretty intriguing concept, right? Especially these days.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a timely one, I think. I mean, in a world that seems obsessed with, instant results and shortcuts, it's definitely a thought-provoking topic. Like, what does it really mean to play the long game, and what does that have to do with success?
Right, and the article doesn't waste any time. It jumps right into the whole idea of patience, which I think we can all agree, like, patience is important, right? But I don't know. It always seems a bit, like, easier said than done. What do you think? What does real patience actually look like in practice, especially when it comes to achieving these long-term goals?
Yeah. No, you're totally right. I mean, it's one thing to say be patient. It's another to actually, live it. I think the article had a really good point though about it's not just about sort of sitting back and waiting for things to happen. It's more about this like I think a conscious choice to stay focused on that long-term vision even when things get tough or you're not seeing those immediate results.
So it's like you have to actively choose to be patient.
Yeah,
Like make it a deliberate part of your strategy or something.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a muscle you have to develop, like the ability to delay gratification, to resist
Sure.
that urge to just jump at the, first shiny object that comes along. And the article mentions, the stock market example, which is a pretty classic one.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was talking about how, like, people freak out when the market dips a little and they want to sell everything.
Yeah,
But those who kind of stay the course and ride out the waves are usually the ones who come out ahead in the end.
precisely. Yeah, it's about having that big picture perspective
Hmm.
and trusting the process even when things get a little bumpy.
Which, let's be honest, they always do, right? So how do you apply that kind of patience in other areas of life then?
hmm
I mean, I know for me, I can get impatient with projects, creative projects, or learning new skills. What about you? Have you had any experiences where you know that long game of patience really paid off in a big way?
Oh, tons. I mean, I think anyone who's, worked towards any kind of meaningful goal can relate to that. For me, I think back to early in my career, I was really eager to, get my research published. And I remember there was this one point where I was so tempted to just go with a less reputable journal just to get it out there quickly, get my name out
Oh,
there.
yeah, I totally get that. The pressure to publish can be intense, for sure.
Right.
So what happened?
Well, I was lucky enough to have a mentor who kind of talked me off the ledge. And they basically said, look, you have a really strong piece of work here. Be patient, take the time to refine it and aim for a top tier publication. And it did. It took another year, maybe even a little longer. But in the end, the impact was so much greater. I mean, it really helped establish my credibility in the field.
Wow, that's a perfect example, I think, of how that strategic patience can really make all the difference.
Definitely.
Now, something else that really stood out to me in this article was how much it emphasized relationships. Why do you think that is? I mean, it's not always the first thing that comes to mind when we think about success, right?
You're right. It's often overlooked. But
Hmm.
I think if you really look at any major accomplishment, whether it's, a scientific breakthrough or a successful business or even like a social movement, none of it happens in a vacuum.
Right.
It's all about collaboration. It's about mentorship, support networks, having that shared vision. The piece makes a great point about, treating others with respect and learning to communicate effectively.
Right, because in the long game, those are the people who are going to be with you every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's so easy to forget sometimes.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget about nurturing those connections.
absolutely.
Now, another point the article brings up, and this one kind of threw me for a loop at first, was this idea of moving forward quickly while also embracing continuous learning.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two? Because they seem a little bit contradictory, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's interesting because it's not really about moving fast in the traditional sense. It's more about being adaptable, being able to pivot and adjust your course as needed. The world is changing so rapidly, and skills that are valuable today might be, obsolete tomorrow. So it's less about speed and more about being a lifelong learner, staying curious, staying open to new information, and not being afraid to, change your mind or adjust your plans.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that ties into something else the article talks about, which is the importance of embracing failure. And then right alongside that, it talks about taking calculated risks. I mean, how do those two seemingly opposite ideas work together in the context of long-term success?
Well, they're actually two sides of the same coin, I think, because, failure is inevitable, especially when you're pushing boundaries, trying new things, stepping outside of your comfort zone. The key is to view failure not as a setback, but as valuable feedback.
Right.
It's a chance to learn, to adjust, to improve. And then on the flip side, you have calculated risks, right? And that's where the real breakthroughs happen. But it's not about being reckless, it's about being strategic.
So it's that balance, not letting the fear of failure hold you back, but also not just jumping into things blindly. Now, here's something I really appreciate about this article. It brings up the importance of self-care, which, you don't always hear about in discussions of, success and achievement. Why do you think that is?
Mm.
And why is it so important, especially when we're talking about the long game?
Yeah, it's so crucial. And I think you're right. It's often overlooked. I think sometimes we get so caught up in that, go, go, go mentality that we forget to take care of ourselves. We push ourselves to the limit and then we wonder why we burn out. The article stresses the importance of both physical and mental well-being, whether that's getting enough sleep, eating healthy, exercise, mindfulness, whatever works for you. It's an investment in your long-term success.
Yeah, it's like if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to sustain that momentum in the long run.
Exactly.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on from this piece is this idea of the power of belief, believing in yourself, your vision. Why is that so crucial for playing the long game?
Well, I think belief is really at the core of resilience
Right.
because there are going to be times when you face setbacks, you face obstacles, and it's that belief in yourself, in your vision, that keeps you going when other people might give up. And then when you have that shared belief, with a team, a community, or even a movement, it creates this incredible synergy, this collective energy that can achieve truly remarkable things.
It's almost like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? If you believe you can achieve something, you're much more likely to actually achieve it, right? If you don't believe in it, then yeah, you're probably not going to get very far. So what's the takeaway here? I mean, after reading this article and having this discussion, what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to remember about playing the long game?
Well, I think it boils down to this, right? Playing the long game is not just about achieving a specific goal or reaching a particular destination. It's about the journey itself. It's about the growth, the evolution, the learning, the setbacks, even the failures. It's about becoming the best version of yourself over time.
I love that. It's not just about the destination. It's about who you become along the way.
Absolutely. So here's a question for your listeners to ponder as they, continue this journey. What is one long-term goal that you're willing to commit to? And what's the very first step you can take towards it today?
That's a great question to reflect on. And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explore the secrets to playing the long game. And remember, success isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And the journey itself is where the real magic happens.
Well said.
See you next time.